You are a soldier in the deadliest global conflict in the history of mankind. Whether fighting the Nazi evil as American, British, Russian, or any other soldier who counted themselves as a member of the Allies, no one fought alone. You are tasked with answering the call and taking part in that fight against evil.
In 2003, the brand new developer Infinity Ward released a first-person shooter that would not only change the genre, but would have a huge impact on video games in general. Centered on World War II, the game would take a shift from the single-soldier actions of most World War II games at that point, and instead focus on mixed unit tactics and large-scale infantry actions. I'm FP Shooter, and on this episode we'll be diving into not only our first real Silver Age FPS, but also the first game in a divisive and legendary series. My friends, welcome to Call of Duty Month. Before we get started, I want to make a note that I'm playing all the COD games on PC. As another note, I'm not really going to be addressing multiplayer in these. Not yet, anyway. There are 2 entries in the franchise that intend to specifically address the multiplayer component of, but you'll know these ones when we get to them. With that said, let's dive into the origins of Call of Duty. Infinity Ward was founded in 2002 when 22 developers including Vince Zampella, Jason West, and Grant Collier left the gaming company 2015 Inc. They had all recently completed development on the 3rd entry in the legendary Medal of Honor series, Medal of Honor Allied Assault, which was also the first MOH title for PC. The team used Allied Assault as a stepping point, only they wanted to expand it from the viewpoint of not just an American soldier, but a British and Russian soldier as well. They wanted to expand the scope from single-soldier actions to a much larger battlefield environment. In addition, they sought to have large, sweeping battles that, to that point, hadn't been fully realized within the FPS genre. To accomplish this goal, the team at Infinity Ward turned to id Tech 3, or the Quake 3 engine. We'll get more into the engine's full capabilities when we dive into Quake 3 sometime in November, though I'll go over its main advancements briefly. IT3, aside from the updated graphics, shading, shadows, and smaller effects such as volumetric fog and mirrors, boasted a big update to how individual character models are presented. IT3 granted models individual parts for multiple animations of the legs, arms and torso, and the head.
So unless you got a better idea or a radio that works, carry on.
This animation allowed for more expressive models and for a more believable force to charge ahead in the battle scenes. Since this was an age before ragdoll skeletons or even real physics, it allowed characters to be animated when hit or blown up or falling through a railing to be more believable. It was due to this and the graphical advances that id Tech 3 mostly dominated the Silver Age of the FPS, until the Unreal and Source engines really took off. While Call of Duty was not the first game to utilize the id Tech 3 engine, nor was it the last, it certainly used it to its maximum effectiveness. Now let's dive into COD's own sweeping story of war. In Call of Duty, you can jump between 3 different main campaigns and stories: American, British, and Russian. In the American campaign, you play as Private Joe Martin. He's been assigned to the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. We join him at the beginning in 1942, when Martin is being brought through training camp before we're thrust forward to 1944, when he and his company parachute into France as part of Operation Overlord, D-Day. The group presses on to take part in the capture of Sainte-Mère-Église, recreating the actual event from the war. The next morning sees you defending the liberated town from a fierce German counterattack. After this defense, Martin joins 2 other soldiers in an attempt to drive through German lines to the American Forward Command to request support.
Oh, hey, great. Good move. Remind me to thank the captain.
Shut up, Elder, and get your ass out! Let's go, Martin! Move it, move!
I can't believe I agreed to do this!
That same day, Martin and the rest of his battalion take part in the Brecourt Manor Assault, recreating another famous battle of D-Day. The performance of Martin's squad in that battle leads to them being detached from the 101st Airborne Division and put on special assignment, that assignment being the rescue of a Captain Price from a heavily fortified mansion.
Made quite a racket, didn't you? That's quite all right. I can still walk.
After freeing Price, the squad rescues Major Ingram from a prisoner of war camp. The last American mission takes place in 1945 with Martin and his unit fighting in the Battle of the Bulge. The next campaign is from the perspective of a British Sergeant Jack Evans during D-Day. He and other members of the 6th Airborne Division, under the command of the same Captain Price, but an earlier time before the rescue, take part in Operation Tonga, the British efforts during Operation Overlord.
All right, everyone, brace for launching!
His group's task is to land in a glider and take the Benoîtville Bridge. They manage to take it and then, similar to the village fight in the American campaign, have to defend it from a German counterattack.
Thank God we still have that flak gun. We can use it to hold the bridge until our relief shows up.
Evans is then rolled into the British Special Air Service and works with Captain Price, after he's been freed from capture, I believe, to sabotage the Eder Dam in Germany. They escape from the dam in the back of a German truck, where they eventually flee Germany in a stolen plane.
Right. Blimey, she's a beauty!
Dürfte ich wohl Ihre Papiere sehen?
Their next mission is to board and sabotage the German battleship Tirpitz, which is anchored in Norway.
Musste zu einem dringenden Treffen mit Admiral Dönitz.
Alles in Ordnung. Willkommen an Bord.
The mission is a success, but it costs Captain Price his life.
We lost the captain. Damn, that was a very fine man.
The final British mission involves the destruction of V-2 rockets in Germany. The last campaign puts you in the shoes of Corporal Alexei Ivanovich Voronin, as he crosses the Volga into Stalingrad in a very accurate recreation of the opening to the film Enemy at the Gates. It follows Voronin through the Battle of Stalingrad and eventually as a sniper. After leading an attack on a German tank facility in Warsaw, Voronin is placed in charge of his own tank as it charges through Poland into Germany. The Russian campaign ends as Voronin and his division assault the Reichstag in Berlin and raise the Russian flag of victory above the building. Something specific to note is the amount of work Infinity Ward put into the accuracy of the levels. You can compare scenes and locations from the game with actual wartime photographs, and see that they took their time to present these locations well. However, the overall story of Call of Duty is threadbare. The characters you meet and fight alongside are generally caricatures of other characters throughout the history of war movies. In fact, it's more like the story is established largely to be a carrying device for the various battles and set pieces. And in a way, it is. However, that's something that will be covered shortly. First and foremost, let's meet the core villains of this COD game. Nazis. Your enemies are Nazis. Lots of Nazis. Nazis armed with rifles, Nazis with machine guns and tanks, officer Nazis, sailor Nazis, tank Nazis, snow Nazis. Just lots of Nazis. I mean that. The only enemies you fight in the course of Call of Duty are identical Nazis. Their AI is nearly non-existent and is probably at its absolute basic for shooters. But there is one crucial AI issue that led to more frustrations for me than I expected. Despite there sometimes being other soldiers around you, more often than not the AI, snipers, machine gun nests, it doesn't matter, they target you. This makes attacking machine gun nests much harder, as you might be expecting your allies to draw its fire, but instead it continues to fire on you. However, a lack of enemy variety isn't really an issue for COD, as you'll soon find out. For now, we'll move on and find out more about the core method of dealing with the Nazi threat, the weapons. Call of Duty was one of the first games to really popularize what we're going to call a two-weapon system. Other games we've covered on Caded that use it are Rise of the Triad and Rainbow Six. The idea, at least in Call of Duty, is to limit you to 2 weapons plus a pistol and grenades. This is a weapon system that will persist in the entire series, with some minor changes such as the removal of the pistol slot. The weapons you generally have at your disposal in Call of Duty fall into 4 main categories. Bolt-action rifles like the Mosin Nagant, Kar 98K, and the Springfield Sniper Rifle. Machine guns like the FG-42 and the BAR. Automatic rifles like the M1 Garand, and submachine guns like the MP40 and PPSH-41 and the Thompson. This may sound weird to say, but weapons are kind of an odd thing to discuss in Call of Duty. Ultimately, weapon choice in Call of Duty boils down to 2 choices, long range and short range. Due to the weapon limitations and the very nature of the levels, you will more often than not find yourself having 1 long range weapon and 1 short range weapon. And of these, a weapon you'll likely find yourself with the most is the German MP40. Why? Because it's without a doubt the most common weapon in the entire game. Ammo for it is everywhere. Not that ammo is ever an issue. There's always ample rounds around you, whether it's for your own weapons or other weapons you pick up off of enemy and ally corpses. The only time you'd usually find yourself carrying anything different is if the objective at hand revolves around destroying a tank, in which case there's always an endless supply of Panzerschrecks nearby. And since it's technically a weapon, I'll talk about controlling the tank in the later Russian campaign. It actually controls pretty well. Its position in the campaign also breaks up the on-foot action before the big epic conclusion to the game. A very important thing to note about the weapons, though, is the sound design and feel of them. While the different weapons in action don't vary all that much, the sound design and feel of the weapons is superb. Generally speaking, this is something not only the first Call of Duty does right, but the series as a whole manages to accomplish. And specifically in Call of Duty, the weapons and sounds of battle are amazingly well done. So if the story, weapons, and enemies aren't the main draw of COD, could it be the gameplay? Let's discuss it. So here we are, the gameplay segment. This, in my opinion, is generally the core focus of Call of Duty, the experience. Most FPSs we've covered so far in KDID have been more freeform. That is, your goal is going from point A to point B, but you're given agency to do it in any way you want. The flow of encounters and combat are dictated entirely by the player's choice. That's not how Call of Duty does it, but how COD does it isn't necessarily bad, just different, and I think it needs to be held to different standards. In a freeform FPS, you control the flow, but in what I'm dubbing a roller coaster FPS, the flow is controlled by a series of objectives and scripted events. Call of Duty, in my honest opinion, was the first major user of the theme park FPS format, and even helped to popularize it in a way of telling an FPS story in a similar way that Doom popularized the freeform FPS format. And as time passes, we'll find that other FPSs utilize one form or the other, or, like Half-Life, combine them. But let's bring the focus back to Call of Duty's core campaign. A typical mission in Call of Duty starts you off with a goal, usually go to this spot. Along the way, enemies pop up as you head to your next objective. These are the most freeform of the levels in Call of Duty. Other levels, like the defensive Santa Mariglis, is more indicative of the overall form. You start under attack and move to cover. You then fight waves of Germans until you kill enough. Then, with the instruction of your captain, you begin a counterattack that ultimately pushes back against the Germans and ends the level. The worst examples of this are the legitimate on-rail sections of levels. These include the level where you're in a car driving through German lines toward the American headquarters, and one where you're in a German truck fleeing from pursuing enemies. While the intent, I believe, is to break up the action, gluing you in one spot while enemies shoot at you while you are purely at the mercy of the scripted path is not really my idea of fun. This is why I call this style of campaign a roller coaster FPS, as the flow of the level is not in the player's control. It fulfills the original design goal of a more cinematic and immersive story experience. The goal of the campaigns is to put you into these battle scenarios. To really look at how this works, we'll look at without a doubt the most cinematic and possibly the best level set in Call of Duty, the Battle of Stalingrad.
Anyone caught deserting his post will be shot. Remember great Comrade Stalin's order, not one step backwards.
The intro section with you on a boat bound for Stalingrad is similar to the on-rail section, but it sets up the level very well. You're just one of many unprepared new soldiers about to be thrust into war. Then, through a scripted event, you're given a round of ammunition and told to follow another soldier with a gun.
The man with the rifle shoots. The man without the rifle falls.
The level is then open to you, but you're presented with a vast battlefield that's also a death trap. Germans firing machine guns into an endlessly charging Red Army. As you stagger forward, you eventually meet a sniper and use yourself as bait to kill some German machine gunners on your way out of the battlefield. But it's not over yet. You still have no gun as you and your comrades charge through the city square towards the enemy.
Victory or death!
When you finally obtain a weapon, you move to the side and snipe German officers before helping your fellow soldiers to destroy the tanks and pour across the square and truly begin the main battle. This level, and to a lesser extent the liberation and defense of Santa Mariglis, demonstrate the best that this style of campaign has to offer and exemplify the goal Call of Duty has with the slogan, "In war, no one fights alone."
It was to Major Zubov that we've retaken Red Square. We'll report to him from here on out.
But this doesn't mean that Call of Duty is a complete perfect package. In fact, this style of campaign has one major drawback. Because you are pushed by the scripting in the game itself, it can be challenging to know when you're actually supposed to progress in a level. In fact, there are some levels where it will eternally spawn allies and enemies until you reach a specific trigger that activates, moving the level forward. This was probably my biggest issue with Call of Duty. Well, that and the AI constantly targeting you when there were other targets, but I already talked about that. One of the biggest things I observed in playing the first Call of Duty again for the first time in several years was, to my surprise, how true it's actually stayed to the stylings of the very first game. Everything that is pointed out as a complaint about modern Call of Duty campaigns, the shorter length, the roller coaster style, the press F to do thing element, the story as an element to propel the set pieces, all of these existed in this very first installment, albeit in a much more primitive fashion. Overall, the gameplay of Call of Duty is very satisfying. It spells out its goal of an immersive battlefield experience and meets it. While it wasn't devoid of more frustrating elements, namely a level in the British campaign where your allies are utterly worthless in defending you while you man an anti-aircraft gun, the overall experience is worth it.
Take 5, but stay put.
Okie doke, Sarge. What the hell else am I gonna do?
Call of Duty is an important and standout game in the history of the first-person shooter. It would make this style of campaign more and more common in the genre, both for good and for bad. As history shows us, the game itself was very popular at launch and spawned a massive billion-dollar franchise. If you have ever wondered how the game became such an enormous franchise, you can do yourself worse in giving this game a playthrough. The reason I wanted to do Call of Duty Month, aside from the impending release of Call of Duty Black Ops 3, was to trace the franchise back to its origins. I wanted to explore the entries of the game from its beginnings and into its modern iterations. Call of Duty can be a franchise that fragments gamers. Some hate the multiplayer component, some hate the yearly iterations, some hate the single player. People are always entitled to their opinions. What's yours? Leave a comment below about what you think of Call of Duty. I've always had kind of a soft spot for Call of Duty, even as it transitioned from serious military to more Tom Clancy Film of the Week games later in the franchise's life. As always, but worry about those ones at a later time. Next time we'll continue Call of Duty Month as we enter a world at war. Until then, my friends, as always, game on and take care.
Private Martin, you've done yourself proud. I can hardly believe you've done it.